Script. Black CEO denied first-class seat. She makes one call. 5 minutes later, freezes 152 flights and $2.1 billion. Vanessa Mitchell sat back in her economy seat, her fingers hovering over the phone screen. She was in a designer suit, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Yet here she was sitting in the back of the plane, squeezed between a businessman who was too engrossed in his laptop and a woman who'd already fallen asleep, her head tilted at an angle. The flight attendant who had forced her into the cramped seat stood nearby, smiling, an air of satisfaction on her face, as if she'd just won some kind of small victory. But Vanessa wasn't the type to be easily defeated. She smiled, tapping the screen of her phone, knowing that with one press, everything would change. For major airports would grind to a halt. But before we get into how this one woman's stand against discrimination brought an entire airline industry to its knees, let me ask you, has anyone ever underestimated you just because of how you look? Because that's exactly what happened to Vanessa today. This story, my friends, is one about standing up to an unjust system, and it's a fight that could have repercussions far beyond a single flight. Vanessa Mitchell had earned everything she had. At 38, she was the founder and CEO of Technova Solutions, a company that had revolutionized the aviation industry with Flight Sync, a sophisticated flight management software now powering 70% of North American commercial flights. Her rise hadn't been easy. Growing up in South Chicago with a single mother who worked 3 jobs, Vanessa knew from an early age that she'd have to work twice as hard to get half as far. But she'd done it. She'd made it. And now this? This was the price she had to pay. As the morning sun streamed through the windows of her downtown Chicago penthouse, Vanessa packed her Rimowa suitcase with purpose, already thinking ahead to the investor meeting that could change her life. The potential to expand Flight Sync globally was on the line, something that could double her company's valuation overnight. Her assistant, Amara, reminded her that the presentation was at 2. She nodded, settling into the rhythm of preparing for another big step forward. But before she could leave for the airport, her phone rang. It was Dr. Eleanor Washington, her former professor and mentor. "Today's the big day," Eleanor said warmly. "How are you feeling?" Vanessa smiled slightly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Ready as I'll ever be. Just remember," Eleanor's tone grew more serious, "the higher you climb, the more they'll try to remind you that they think you don't belong there." Vanessa nodded, her resolve hardening. "I've dealt with that my whole life. This isn't new." Eleanor's voice softened. "That's why you're extraordinary, Vanessa. Your ability to navigate these waters with grace, without ever compromising who you are, that's your superpower." The words hit home, but Vanessa knew that grace would soon be tested in a way she hadn't imagined. By the time she got to O'Hare International Airport, her mind was buzzing, but her stride was steady. She had flown this route a dozen times, always in first class. As the CEO of a company that provided essential software to the aviation industry, she knew the value of maintaining relationships with different airlines. Today, though, her destination was simple: to get on her flight, attend the meeting, and make her company's future global. But today, something would happen that would change everything. She walked to the premium check-in counter, her boarding pass already pulled up on her phone. A gate agent named Cameron glanced at her, and then at her boarding pass. A flicker of disbelief crossed his face. "First class?" he asked, his voice barely hiding his surprise. Vanessa, keeping her composure, nodded. "Yes, that's correct." He stared at his computer screen for an uncomfortable amount of time before looking back at her. "I don't see your reservation here." Vanessa held up her phone, showing him the confirmation. "It's right here." Cameron squinted at it. "You're sure you're in the right line?" he asked, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. Vanessa's chest tightened. She had grown accustomed to people questioning her place, but something about today felt different. She was calm, though cool under pressure. "I'm positive," she replied. "I'm a platinum member, and this is my first-class reservation." The man behind her, a white businessman, was processed in mere seconds, no questions asked, just a quick scan of his boarding pass. Vanessa's gaze moved back to Cameron and his supervisor, Melissa Brooks, who soon arrived at the counter. "Is there a problem here?" Melissa asked, addressing Cameron without even acknowledging Vanessa directly. Cameron explained the situation in a tone that reeked of condescension. "Ms. Mitchell here thinks she has a first-class ticket, but our system shows she's booked in economy. Melissa turned to Vanessa with an almost theatrical display of concern. Let me see your confirmation. After examining it, she looked at Vanessa and smiled thinly. It seems there was a system error. According to our records, you're actually booked in economy. Vanessa held her ground. I personally booked this ticket 3 weeks ago. I've received confirmation, and I've paid for first class. Sometimes technology glitches, Melissa explained, her smile too sweet to be genuine. There must have been a misunderstanding when you booked. Vanessa bit back her frustration, keeping her voice steady. I've flown this route dozens of times, always in first class. I'd like to speak to your supervisor. Melissa's response was quick and dismissive. The supervisor's unavailable right now. We've already processed all the first-class passengers. If you'd like, we can offer you a voucher and seat you in economy. It was deliberate. The humiliation was painful, but Vanessa knew this wasn't just about a seat. It was about dignity. She glanced around and saw others watching the scene unfold, some pretending not to see, others clearly uncomfortable, but not a single person stepped up. Vanessa made a decision. She could cause a scene, but that wouldn't get her anywhere. So, she quietly accepted the economy boarding pass. Fine, she said, I'll accept the economy seat. Before she walked away, she snapped a photo of their name badges and screenshots of her original booking. She wasn't letting this go. Not this time. As she walked toward security, her mind raced. This wasn't just about her. This was about everyone who had ever been made to feel small because of the color of their skin. For years, Vanessa had played the game. She'd risen above the slights, swallowed her anger, and moved forward with grace. But today was different. At the gate, the final insult came. First-class passengers were boarding with warm smiles and polite greetings, while Vanessa was sent down to economy. She took her seat 32B, a middle seat between two strangers, and made a silent promise to herself. She wasn't going to let this slide anymore. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Vanessa connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi and began drafting an email to her legal team, documenting the events while they were still fresh. Her fingers froze when she overheard a conversation between two flight attendants. "Can you believe the attitude?" one of them whispered, just loud enough for Vanessa to hear. "Yeah," the other responded. "Some people get one good job and suddenly think they own the place." Vanessa's heart sank. The discrimination was real, and it was systematic. This wasn't just a glitch, this was bias. She quickly updated her email, adding the head of legal and research to the recipients. This wasn't just about her incident. This was part of a larger, insidious pattern. The data they gathered confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't a one-time thing. This airline, one that relied on her technology, had a history of racial bias in first-class seating, disproportionately affecting black passengers. And it was time for them to face the consequences. Vanessa made a bold decision. She would use Technova's Emergency Protocol Access, a system feature meant for critical safety situations, to freeze the airline's flight operations temporarily. It would be a message, a big one. She spent the next few hours preparing. By the time she got to her hotel, the groundwork was set. The legal team had compiled evidence, and everything was in place. The airline's response: a travel voucher. A meaningless gesture. Vanessa knew what had to be done. With one final email, she issued her demand. Either the airline acknowledged the discrimination and took steps to rectify it, or she would freeze their operations. The clock was ticking. And then, at precisely 9 a.m., Vanessa authorized the diagnostic. The airline's flights were grounded. Chaos spread across major airports, and within minutes, the financial damage began to pile up. $2.1 billion in combined losses. Vanessa watched, calm and resolute, as the situation unfolded. It wasn't about revenge, it was about making the system accountable. And when Lawrence Stanford, the CEO of the airline, called her, demanding an explanation, Vanessa remained unshaken. "You want to meet?" she asked him. "Come to my office in 1 hour." The meeting that followed would change everything for her, for the airline, and for anyone who had ever been held down because of their skin color. Vanessa had made her stand, and the world had taken notice. The final moments played out like a slow burn as Vanessa watched the airline executives scramble. Their response was weak, but Vanessa's actions spoke volumes. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every person who had been made to feel less than because of who they were. By the end of the day, the airline had agreed to her terms. The employees involved in the incident were fired, a public apology was issued, and mandatory anti-bias training was set to begin. Vanessa left the meeting with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just a CEO anymore. She was a force for change. And as the camera zoomed out, the credits rolled, leaving the audience to consider, how far would you go to fight for what's right? What would you do if the system itself was stacked against you? Remember, sometimes change doesn't come through silence. Sometimes it takes standing up and showing the world that dignity is non-negotiable. What do you think? Should Vanessa have gone this far? Or do you think there's a better way to handle situations like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in standing up for what's right, and subscribe for more stories about fighting injustice.